afternoon, and welcome to Bridgecast. We are super excited that you're with us. I am joined by Dr. Kleiman from Webster University today. We're going to talk about place-based learning. That is place, as in like P-L-A-C-E, not P-L-A-Y, as some people have heard when I say it quickly, but we're talking about place-based learning, which is a theory that Dr. Kleiman, in collaboration with other professors and other researchers across the nation, have talked about in regards to education. I talked briefly over place-based learning 2 weeks ago on Bridgecast, just about myself, about my work with Dr. Kleiman, and now we're bringing on Kim to talk a little bit more about place-based learning, about the research he is doing, and about the really cool things that we're doing in collaboration with Bridge Builders. One thing I do want to hit on before we dive in, and I'll talk about this a little bit more at the end of Bridgecast, this will be the last Bridgecast we have for a while. We're going to go on a little hiatus. I'm going to be doing some work with some of my other jobs, and in the meantime, we're going to continue to push out some information to you all regarding Black Lives Matter, regarding activism within St. Louis community, Dupree community, and beyond, and ways that you can get involved and support Bridge Builders as it is right now. So please stay in touch with us. Please continue to push us out to your friends. It is a crucial time in our community to make sure that nonprofits like our own stay above the water and are able to still offer the programming that we are able to offer. So without any ado, I'm going to continue to pass it over to Kim. And Kim, can you give us a little bit of intro about yourself? I know I gave a brief intro, but can you talk a little bit about your work, what you do at Webster University, and about how you found a love of place-based learning?
Sure. I'm a little intimidated that this is the last one. I think there is always some chance that I may break it, but I hope not. And I don't think I will, because I have really treasured my collaboration with Josh and with Bridge Builders. And the idea of the exchange that this organization does when circumstances allow. I met Josh in a class that I was teaching as part of a learning community. And I had always been interested in formal education, some natural history elements of observation and pattern recognition. And so place became a way of exploring community. And so the class that Josh was a major contributor to looked at Webster Groves as a focal point for learning. Students were going to be on campus, and we're going to get to know what the university offered, but also to think about how the university could be, how it's situated in the neighborhood. And through the course of this process, and finding out that there's a literature, I have come to the conclusion that if you're interested in studying community, and I am, then you need to study place, because place is where community happens. That's probably the central concept I try to explore. But it's based on the idea that we are placemakers, that we give place meaning, that we want to go and see the old house, we want to go back to our old hometown. The homecomings, think about what high school or college homecomings are, but a chance to go back. And it's because of what we do in places that, above all, give them real meaning, and that they are really specific, so that if, as a teacher, if I'm asking the students to think about place, and to, if you will, think about the ghosts that are around them, we can be citizens of time, that we can see how we do that. I'm a historian of science by training, and in particular, very interested in natural history. I'm not particularly good at it, but I think it's really powerful. And one of the things that I made Josh and other students do and have been doing for semester after semester is they come to class, I say, pick up your stuff, we're going to go for a walk. And we walk around campus and try to figure out the history of the university by looking at the buildings. It's history, but history not in terms of dates, but relative stuff. Josh, I really, really like that exercise, and I see no reason to get rid of it. But I'm always curious about how you experienced it, and maybe ask you, although we weren't talking specifically about place that year.
Yeah.
Can you in the framework of thinking about place, how did you experience that exercise?
And so my experience of it was very interesting because I grew up around Webster Groves. My grandparents lived right across the street from the university, and I grew up saying, you know, there's no way I'm going to go to Webster University because it's too close to home. And then lo and behold, I found myself taking the walking tour my first semester with Webster University with you about Webster University and finding things that I never experienced growing up around it the whole time. And so from that perspective, that changed my whole idea of the place of Webster Groves, or Webster University, but at the same time rang true to a lot of reasons of how I viewed it. And so I always kind of viewed our central building, the Loretto Hall, as very, church-esque architecture, and then finding out that it was originally a Catholic-based school from the Sisters of Loretto was incredibly impactful for how I viewed the school going forward and our history as a whole, becoming more of a secular university and a more global citizen-based university. And I know you worked incredibly hard on the GCP, the Global Citizenship Program, and seeing how we came to that place and your and Bruce's time at the university came to contribute to that. So that was my experience of it.
And I hope that the constructing that past, what I like about that exercise is that as we learn to see, and it's not easy, but as we learn to see with some hints, then you begin to develop habits of looking at the history that you see just in the elements of place. I borrowed this exercise and I assigned readings from the botanist, evolutionary biologist who I have studied pretty closely, a guy named Edgar Anderson, who was at the Missouri Botanical Garden. And Anderson is after my own spirit. I hope I live up to him. But I gave you all and will give students again an essay called A Nice Quiet Evening with a Potato, in which he said, if you want to study plants, take something humble like a potato and really, really look at it. You got to know what you're looking for. And he provided some terminology. It is a tuber, which is like a stem. It's not like a root. It's like a stem. It's directional, and there are elements to it in the eyes, the so-called eyes of a potato, that sometimes grow if you don't get it, use it, are part of it trying to be a stem. And so he suggests that, and then the other article that I give out talks about how you can kind of reconstruct in your mind the past of a place. In this case, it's a field where there was a barbed wire fence down the middle of it. the barbed wire is gone except for a few little fragments, and Anderson tries to tip people off about what it is. But in virtually all cases, we try to look at it really, really hard and get lots and lots of detail. But it's that moment where things snap into place. And so one student does see 2 pieces of barbed wire left on a couple of trees and recognizes that one side was pasture and one side was cleared for planting. And so that's kind of sensitivity. I mean, again, I don't think I'm very good at natural history. I know I wouldn't have picked up on Anderson's exercise, but I think there's something to that idea of observation and pattern recognition that grounds us in place. And Anderson also worked with the editor of a journal after World War II called the late 40s, 50s, and into the 60s, called Landscape. And this was John Brinkerhoff Jackson, who was trying to figure out and celebrate and study how people used the land. So when our bridge builders friends from the reservation come to the, quote, big city, and maybe even more importantly, when St. Louis students go up there, when students study abroad, you notice all sorts of things because it's new and foreign, and you're really, really, really attuned to place.
Yeah.
I guess I should talk a little bit about, and so in that framework, in that framework, Josh, how have you seen people on both sides of the exchange respond to the new place, the different place?
Yeah. Wow, I don't normally get asked questions back, but I think that it's still important nonetheless, so thank you. But what I have experience on seeing the exchange program and seeing exchange program members on both sides, both from Dupree and St. Louis, is noticing things that, both myself as a St. Louis native have never noticed, but also things that seem very normal to us. And one of the things that it was discussed was the idea of the arch. Like, this is something that's a defining characteristic for St. Louis, and although it seems a very small part of my life, I see St. Louis as a much larger community than just the arch. That is something that definitely sticks out to folks coming to St. Louis and haven't had a chance to see St. Louis before. Going to the reservation, I see similar patterns and things that I first experienced. And then when I go every time, it seems like another layer is pulled back from the community and how that community is engaging in a new way with myself and with the team and with people having interpersonal connections with the team members on both sides. And so I would say that at first glance, yes, it seems like the land is very scattered. There's cattle in this area, and there is a different focus of housing in different parts of the little tiny town of Dupree. And as we pull back the layers of it, we find that that's because of systematic land grabbing over time and land during the Great Depression being given to ranchers from reservation land, which leads to a white population existing in the town of Dupree, which is on the Cheyenne River Reservation. So that's something that continues to be developed for me. Kim, how do you see this and what we just talked about playing into educational theories going forward? So you've been a professor at Webster University for 30 years now. And how do you see it?
I ain't that old.
You're not that old, I'm sorry. And how do you see it playing into educational theories in the future?
Well, I would like to think that I am a reflective teacher, a thoughtful teacher. I find theories interesting and suggestive. I don't think of I try not to be doctrinaire. I would rather do what works. I'd rather ask my fellow participant questions as much as talk. So I'm not necessarily real good at coloring between the lines of a theory, but I do think that place is a very rich way into it. Again, I go back to what I keep thinking about place, that it's where we build community and we give place meaning. It's something, it's got to be something more than just the blank physical surroundings. Josh, you always grew up across the street from Webster University, yeah. And yet you saw it and you didn't see it. Yes. Now that you go to school there, now that you have memories connected to it, it's a different, literally, place because yeah. you have given it different meaning. On that first day on campus, you're, wow, this is new. What am I supposed to pay attention to? Yeah. And there comes a point where you figure it all out and you stop seeing things. Mm-hmm. But I really like that image of pulling the layers back and kind of understanding how this new place works. So education theory, I kind of leave that a little bit to the experts. I find that I'm working within traditions and have very definite ideas about how people learn and what's important. I would also, so that, for instance, because I'm very interested in community, I think I try to work my classes so that people grab hold of it. Kleiman education, which was a parallel idea that my colleague Bruce Humbaugh presented to Josh and his colleagues. But I'm really taken with the idea from Outward Bound that they say they try to organize their activities so that participants, that people see themselves as participants, not as passengers, that there is agency, that there is try to overcome the alienation, if you will, that, this is what I'm doing in school, but it's too abstracted through the framework of school to not be real life. I mean, we say this all the time. Well, what are you going to do when you go out in the real world? Yeah. What can you do with that degree in the real world? And there are ways in which that's a very powerful and important question, because if we see ourselves as safely cocooned in this artificial place, then we very much limit ourselves. But if we think our ideas matter, then of course they're going to apply in the real world. So, Josh, am I getting at the idea of education theory? I think that it's about community, that we learn in context, yeah. That we build knowledge. What I like about place is, yes, we construct knowledge, but we don't construct it out of thin air. Yes. That it is about a specific set of buildings, a specific set of roads, a particular culture that interacts with the environment. Mm-hmm. There is something about St. Louis being a river town, both in terms of its relatively longer history, its industries, its immigration patterns. I think it's a place-based question. Why is Memphis and St. Louis barbecue different than the barbecue. I grew up in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Both towns had big packing plants. Both towns had significant African American populations. But the migration patterns were different. The barbecue sauce is different. And that's a tiny thing. But so all of those things are interesting. And again, if we can learn to be attentive to observing and develop some habits about what you're looking at, then you can learn something. And I guess maybe a reason why I build my courses around things like this, around the potatoes you can have a nice quiet evening with, if you will, then it tumbles out. I wouldn't use a textbook because I find it too confining. But also that there are possibilities. I hope, Josh, that you and engaged students in the class, and I have always been lucky by having so many of them, that after you kind of figure out which way is up, I hope you learned things that were meaningful to you.
Yes. I would honestly think so, and I was going to comment on how I think that your style of learning that I experienced in your seminar was shocking at first. It was, and for me to go from a background that was very, I came straight from training with the Marine Corps where everything was very regimented, everything was very much structured, and then you would walk into class each day with Kim, and you wouldn't really know what you would get, right? It would either be like a walkout through Webster, or it would be a brand new presentation from a former student, or it would be a lecture. And then even the way we got grades was just on a slip of paper saying what we did good, what we did bad, and the grade that we got from it. And so although I think it was shocking and I had to sort of find out this culture shock and figure out which direction I was headed in the way of my education, what I did learn from it was the constructionist learning theory, or the place-based learning theories that you continue to talk about. And with your and Bruce's class in specific, designing our education to what, as a group, we found to be most collectively interesting or collectively positive for our growth as scholars. And so I thought that to be incredibly impactful going forward, and in the way that I look at the exchange program, the way that I look at the way I handle the interns, is designing what is best for them, because that self-described needs, that idea of working with marginalized communities, but also students, basically anything that you provide care for somebody, if you ask them, what would you like to do? How best can I care for you in this way? A lot of times you get some really profound answers that give you insight that you wouldn't have in the first place. So I think in that way, the education is very impactful through looking at this through the lens of place-based learning.
Yeah, I think about curiosity a lot, and that's something that I've tried to teach, but I think you just said something, and it's an idea that I'm learning from you and from Bruce Humbaugh about care. I mean, I think it's very sympathetic to my ideas about student agency and the role of student perceptions, and using that, not just passively sitting back, but using and engaging with that. But if we see students, if we see colleagues, if we see the people we're working with as participants, not objects. If we give people a sense of their own dignity, a sense of that they have a stake in this, then that curiosity about the world around them, that curiosity about other people, can be the basis of caring. That was the thing I just learned from the last thing that you said, that care is really tied to being curious about people. And again, to see people as actors for themselves, not people to manipulate, not people who have to be taken care of for their own good, but the people who are part of this solution. I know Josh and I have also talked a lot about leadership, because again, if you're a good citizen, if you care about your community, if you care about and are curious about your fellows, then your place in the world is different.
Yeah.
And obviously we're swimming uphill because, it's very, very easy to get us to, well, maybe it's not so easy because there aren't sports and things like that, but the society encourages a lot of passivity.
Yeah. And I think that passivity comes through in what I wanted to talk about next, in connecting place-based learning to human rights as a whole. And from the mission of the organization, I would like to mention, the goal of why we do the exchange programs. And ultimately, the exchange programs are not just to better the lives of the people participating in those programs, but give the members of the exchange program tools to participate in their communities that offer for ways to break down racial divides, nationality, religious divides, gender divides, all these different things that we see from systematic oppression, from racism, sexism, all the isms that exist within our community, and how best we can break down that going forward, working with marginalized communities. How do you think place-based learning can be connected with this sense of human rights and with this sense of breaking down these divides?
I think there's a very definite connection. And when you wrote that question, I was thinking about, human rights situations are very specific. They're tied to places. Sometimes the line on a map makes all the difference in the world, and yet it doesn't. And the numbers on the pandemic across lines in Europe or in North America reflect cultural, social, political differences. So there's that. But again, I think, Josh, what you were just saying really, really speaks to the way in which, if we see ourselves with curiosity, if we see our surroundings with curiosity, if we see our communities with curiosity, then we're both, less inclined to be complicit in abuses of human rights, but maybe even more importantly, we lay the basis for taking this on, for creating the kind of response to these abuses, so that whatever the particular issue of the day is, the particular place where we're asked to fight, to witness, to lay bare, and it is because of overcoming the myriad of divisions that get thrown at us. So yeah, the leadership that you build on the reservation, that you build here, that we build in our classrooms, are how people come together. And that's what happens. People who have this kind of experience, who see themselves in a way, you start to notice other people who are just like you. And those are the people you want to talk to, and those are the people who you can do work with, and are gravitating towards common goals.
Yes.
So I hope that helps.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a very good insight into looking at how, on the surface level, walking around your university and asking questions about the historic place or the historic origin of the place that you exist within might not be connected to something like land and water usage with indigenous people. But I would say in the larger picture, it leads to a connection of looking at how land and water usage and property rights have been a cross-section with indigenous rights and environmentalism, and with different categories of how the United States has interacted with indigenous communities over a period of time, just by looking at the origin of your community. I think that it can all be connected in that way, and it has to start with learning about your place, and then learning about other places. So I think you have a very profound insight in that way that you have taught me. I know that we are on a bit of a time hatch, so I do want to ask one last question, because I know that it might be one that is rather large for you. One of the things about Bridgecast that I always want to do is offer the space to the guest to speak on a topic that they would like to speak on. And so that may be anything from, Kansas City barbecue versus St. Louis barbecue, but a large conversation like place-based learning. Is there something that you would like to share with the Bridge Builders community now, Kim?
I have followed these discussions. I don't have. Yes, there are ways in which I have a particular axe to grind, but no, it's about what Bridge Builders does. I really like this. I value our collaboration. What you're doing has advanced my thinking about place. I think these concepts of what constitutes the places where a community is based, that humans build place, that place has this sort of history, is a sort of pretty robust hypothesis, but the particulars matter, and what Dupree does and what St. Louis does, I think is there and meaningful, and the details matter. The details are what is interesting. So, but I think I also appreciate and think that what this discussion reminds me of is the role of care, and this, if you will, kind of core moral precept that people will find the solution to their problems by in themselves and in their collaboration with others, and that if you see yourself as an actor in history, and if you see your stake in raising the general level of the culture, and pulling everybody around you up, then you get away from some of the worst aspects of the society, which is you're special. You deserve the promotion. You are the one who can communicate our elite ideas to those people who, you're better than they are. I think that place and specificity and curiosity are all kind of tied to a view that, yeah, we can make our own history. I mean, that's right there in the place thing. The humans make their history, not as we choose, not out of whole cloth, but out of the circumstances, the cards were dealt, the situations we find ourselves in, the circumstances. I know the George Floyd protests have been a factor in here, but and as gruesome as those 8 minutes and 46 seconds were, that stuff's been going on for a long time, and I have seen any number of protests against killer cops. What is so exciting about this time is the breadth, the range, the leadership that's forming, and that's people who are saying, it's me, it's us, it's not a particular political candidate, it's not a lawsuit, it's what we do as we get together and figure things out. And there is a unity in my thinking about place and leadership and social change, but at the same time, I'm not trying to moralize through my teaching or even particularly do anything specifically political, either from a community organizing way or certainly not in a partisan electoral way. But we have but I think this view of people is at the core of what I do. And so it impacts how I teach. Learn what you want to learn. Observe what you want to learn. Let's develop tools together.
Yes.
So.
Very profound. So thank you, Kim. I do appreciate that. I like your idea of how this idea of place ties us together into more of a collective ideal to walk towards a better tomorrow, a better community, and that's ultimately what Bridge Builders has been founded upon. Is our idea of communal living at its core is based out of place. And so when our team lives together for 2 weeks, they sleep, they eat, they cook, they clean, they experience strong emotional ties together. All these things bring them closer together and start to show them that it's not, they're not competing with one another. There's no prize at the end of the exchange program. The only thing that will come is a shirt that says you survived the exchange program, right? Just in the way of how they survive your class in the scholars program in a similar way. And I think that is impactful.
Survive.
And that's an impactful way of looking at community. And so thank you again for coming on and giving your insights on place-based learning, on learning education theories as a whole, and a better view of how we can teach this in our classrooms, within our homes, within our friend circles, and our communities as a whole. I do want to say to our community, thank you so much for being a part of this Bridgecast over the past 15 episodes. You all have been here with us, been communicating with us, participating in our raffles, and I think Kim was a perfect candidate for our season finale for this way, so we're going to frame it as a season finale, season 1 of Bridgecast, and we will be back probably within the next month and a half to start back up with the next season of interviews to continue to talk about community, the way that we can engage with our communities and different intersectional issues like environmentalism, feminism, and ways that we connect with that at abroad. So Kim, thank you again. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish for today?
No, you should have the last word, and I think it was a good one.
Thank you. You guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys soon.